All right, everybody. My name is Ruth Ganss. I'm one of the lab heads here at the Perkins, and I have the honor to give the last talk, which is entitled Fighting Cancer, A Glimpse into the Future. Now, I'm a researcher. I do biomedical research, and my main interest has always been cancer. Now, what I would like to share with you today is I would like to sort of give you a little bit of an introduction. We start very basic into what cancer is. Then I give you a little bit, I would like to introduce a few terms which I think everyone should know because we are talking about new treatment options. And I also show you a little bit what research we do. And we'll leave you, hopefully, with a little bit of optimism in the air. So, we do know, actually, that cancer is the second most frequent cause for death in Australia. So this is quite a daunting figure and only comes after heart disease. We are fortunate because we are in a development country and we don't really die anymore of infections. This obviously looks very different when we go into developmental countries. So this slide, you can't read it, but it just shows that cancer is actually a global affair. It's not just Australians. Cancer is everywhere. It is just that the frequency of different cancer types changes with the location. And if we look into Australia, this is what we actually see. So there are male and female specific cancers, and you can see that in male, the most frequent cancer type is prostate cancer. In females, it's breast. This is followed by bowel cancer in both sexes. And then we have melanoma, which is a very nasty one. We have lung cancer, there's not much change, and here bladder and lymphoma. So this is specific for Australia, but really, what is cancer? So what I have told you is that it arises in different organs. But cancer really, if you want to think what it is a disease where normal cells become abnormal. And they divide without having a control, because normally your body very much controls how your cells renew and survive and divide. There is something which actually gets out of control. Now, what I will show you later is that a cancer grows actually quite slowly in a stepwise process. And whilst the cancer is growing, it takes care of itself, meaning it needs nutrients to grow. And to do that, it needs a blood supply, like every organ in your body. So the cancer actually establishes its own blood supply. Now, what is the nastiest part about cancer is that cancer cells can spread into other parts of your body. And I'm sure you all understand the concept of metastasis formation. And in fact, most of the cancer patients don't die of their primary tumor, but they die because the tumor spreads to other organs. Now, this is an example of breast cancer, which shows you how it develops in a multi-step process. So here we have a duct, breast duct. This is a normal tissue, and it has a normal function. And you can see that all the cells really fit very well into a certain shape, which has a certain function. And what happens in the first step is actually that some of these cells start to divide and to grow. And they grow into a space where they are not supposed to be. Now, what happens after that is some of these cells develop a certain aggressiveness, which is depicted in blue. And these cells grow even faster. And if you look careful here, these red dots, they actually depict the blood supply. The tumor actually drives these blood cells to come in. Now, the worst thing about it is these aggressive cells actually break through the normal cell layer and spread through the blood vessels and other means into other parts of the body. Now, this is the example for breast cancer. If we look at prostate cancer, the tissue looks a little bit different, but the principles are the same. We have a beautiful tissue architecture in normal tissue. We have here more dividing, faster dividing cells, cells which are more aggressive, and then cells which break through the tissue barrier and invade other tissue. So that means even though cancer is so difficult to cure, because each tumor, each tissue harbors a different type of cancer, and this is, I think, pretty understandable if you think that a liver is not a lung, a heart is not a bladder. So wherever the tumor arises, the tumor looks somehow different. However, cancer shares fundamental principles. And so this is just to demonstrate where I actually think we are at with our classic cancer therapy. If you imagine that a cancer is like a garden full of weed, then it would probably look like this. You don't see the nice architecture of your garden beds anymore. So what we currently can do is actually we use drugs, chemotherapy, radiotherapy to destroy the cancer. And I'm sure all of you know someone in your family or friends who have gone through one of those stringent therapies. It may actually kill the tumor, but what it does very often is it kills so much more. So what I'm saying with these graphic examples is we do have means to combat cancer, but they are often quite toxic. We have a lot of side effects. And when we cure the cancer, we do actually can leave side effects which are not really very nice to treat or to live with. So this is because our current limitations are that the cytotoxic drugs we use often do not reach the tumor cells in amounts which should be used to kill the tumor, and they do a lot of harm in other healthy tissue. And often the tumor develops resistance to the drug we use, and so after one round of response, often there is relapse, and then we are running out of drugs. So as a researcher, you ask yourself, can you do better? And really, this is what is driving all of us. This is cancer, but there are other diseases we research on in this building. So for that, I would like to take you on a little excursion of a concept which has been developed actually in the 1970s by a man called Judah Folkman. He was actually an oncologist at Harvard in Boston, and he said, look, if the cancer blood vessels are needed to feed the tumor and bring the nutrients in to make it grow, why don't we just kill these blood vessels off, and we may actually be able to stop the tumor from growing. Now, I just want to mention that the growth of blood vessels into tumors is a process which is called angiogenesis, and you may have heard, and that's a terminology I would like to introduce today, the therapy which is called anti-angiogenesis therapy. That's a therapy which kills the blood vessels which feed the tumor. And this is the father of this therapy. Now, from the conception of the idea to now, there have been multiple drugs developed to specifically target the blood vessels. And so the idea really is we have normal blood vessels which are very nicely hierarchically structured, which actually bring blood and nutrients to all of our organs. When a tumor grows, the tumor is very desperate and it brings a lot of abnormal blood vessels in. They don't look like the normal vessels. They are very abnormal. And so the idea, as I said, was in this anti-angiogenesis therapy to specifically kill these abnormal tumor vessels, but to leave these vessels intact. Now, there has been a lot of development going into this, and these were actually the first clinical data which showed that this is actually in bowel cancer patients. If you give the standard treatment, which is chemotherapy, this is the survival time. If you give chemotherapy together with anti-angiogenesis therapy, you actually extend the survival by about 4 months. This drug actually is currently in the clinic, and it is available for certain cancer types. If you are a cancer patient, I think a 4-month survival for a very aggressive cancer is progress. However, so where we stand in the year 2015 is that these anti-angiogenic drugs are, first of all, mainly effective when combined with the classical chemotherapy. They do actually have effects in some cancer, like bowel, lung, kidney, and brain. They are not effective in other cancers, and breast is one example. So what happens is also that they only give you like a 4 months on average life extension because the tumor is exceedingly smart. The tumor knows that the blood vessels are killed, and it does actually try very desperately to develop mechanism to bring blood vessel growth back. And so what happens after a phase where the tumor growth is stopped, it starts growing again because it develops other mechanisms. So whilst this therapy is valid for some cancers, it is certainly not a cure for the cancer problem. So where to from here? And again, this is not really for the clinicians and the oncologists to decide, because the oncologists use the drug the researchers develop. And this is why our role as a researcher is very important. So this is where I would like to give you a little glimpse into the research which is actually ongoing in my lab. We ask a simple question: if these blood vessels are abnormal, can we make them more normal? And the answer is, we can. And what we have shown, and this is an example where we used pancreatic cancer, which is a very aggressive cancer form. And what is shown here, and this is a real picture, this is not a cartoon, these are blood vessels which grow in the tumor, and they are very abnormal. They are not like any normal tissue because they are huge, and then there are some very small ones. Some have blind endings, they go nowhere. And we used this and made it more normal. Now, this is actually quite important, because when you make these blood vessels more normal, what happens is that you get more blood in the tumor, but you also get your drugs better into the tumor. And another issue is that we all have immune cells in our body. These immune cells are needed when you have an infection, and we all rely on our immune cells to combat infectious disease, just a simple virus often. Now, these immune cells we knew potentially could also attack the tumor. For those who have been in the previous talk, you have heard a little bit about these immune cells, because potentially they can recognize the tumor, but often they can't reach the tumor. So again, the blood vessels are exceedingly important for these immune cells to reach the tumor. Once they are there and they are active, they may kill the tumor. So I told you we are trying to normalize the vessels, and the idea is that these immune cells, which sort of swim along in your blood, can actually better get out of these blood vessels, which is normally blocked if you have abnormal blood vessels. And if we make it more normal, they may actually come through and kill the tumor then and there. So you have to imagine, if this is a little tumor, this is your blood supply, which everyone has. The tumor attracts new blood vessels to bring all the supply it needs. And these blue dots symbolizes the immune cells. And what happens normally that the immune cells actually hover outside the tumor and they can't really penetrate it. So, and this is just a very little summary of years of research actually, where we have, again, we have these abnormal tumor vessels. And what we have developed are actually little vehicles which specifically bind to these abnormal vessels. They see these vessels and specifically go there. And these vehicles have actually a cargo, and the cargo is released, and the release of this transforms the vessels into more normal vessels. And then the consequence of this is that the immune cells do actually penetrate in the tumor, where they then can kill the aggressive tumor cells. So this is a very, very condensed and nutshells, and I really want to be everyone to understand the concept. The tumor cannot be penetrated by immune cells. So what we are trying to do, we use the abnormality of the tumor vessels to direct these vesicles in. These vesicles have a payload which normalizes the vessels, and then the T cells come in. And this causes tumor destruction. And this is actually one of the many approaches which is called immunotherapy, because it uses your body's immune system to fight the cancer. Now, we are working here right in this building. But after many, many years where people have actually tried to fight the cancer with the immune system, finally there have been really big breakthroughs. And this is actually a scientific journal. It's read by scientists, and they have declared cancer immunotherapy as the breakthrough technology in the year 2013. Now, you may say, this is all nice and fine if the researchers just amuse themselves. But what I want to actually bring across today, if you declare something as being the breakthrough, there is some substance in it. And so I just want to show you that there are actually now drugs on the market which specifically target or enhance the immune response into cancer. Now, whilst this is not a cure, I think these are the best results I have ever seen since I started to work on cancer 20-odd years ago. So this is a picture. So first of all, this is an antibody called ipilimumab. And this antibody has been tested mainly so far in melanoma patients. But I can reassure you there are hundreds of clinical trials internationally on all sorts of cancers where this effect is tested. And this is just a clinical picture where the arrows really symbolize metastatic disease, and this antibody currently is only indicated for melanoma, which is otherwise not treatable. So this is for patients who have failed other treatment modalities. And you can see, if you just judge by the arrow, that there is quite a therapeutic effect. Now, that actually brings us from relapse-free survival of 17 months to an average of 28 months. And that is in comparison to the results I showed you before. In the context of anti-angiogenesis therapy, this is much better. So there has been actually, just 2 months ago, in the ABC News, I saw that this antibody, which as a scientist I know very well, has been finally approved in Australia, and it has actually been added to the patient benefit list. And this is a similar antibody which has a similar function to the previous one I showed. They basically activate immune cells to attack melanoma. Again, it is only indicated so far for melanoma patients which fail first-line treatment. So this antibody is now available, and I just, for those who are really interested in, there is actually a website which shows Cancer Trials Australia, which shows all ongoing trials of this product, of the previous drug, and of a combination of these two, which looks very promising. So just to summarize what I have said, cancer really is a global problem. It's not just an Australian problem, and I think it affects everyone. Currently, the best option is to remove your tumor and to cure you. Often, however, when diagnosed, this is too late and patients have metastasis, or the primary tumor is very aggressive. So what we currently have, we have chemo and radiation therapy with the side effects I mentioned earlier. There are new therapies emerging, and I gave you the example of the very encouraging clinical trials, in particular in melanoma, but also in other cancers now coming, of immune therapies. However, what I also want to stress is that in order to combat cancer, we do need to think, every one of us need to think about lifestyle, because I think it is we all understand now that smoking causes cancer. But I don't think we fully understand yet that obesity causes cancer. And the data are very clear. And I just said jokingly in my tours today, we all are now into bike riding and into walking. And these are all activities the Perkins runs to raise funds for cancer. But ironically, I actually think it is not just to raise the funds to cure cancer. You have a really great benefit if every one of us thinks about being physically active and participating in things like this. Early detection is obviously the way forward, if you can, and if certain cancer types are offered, screening programs are offered, and you know, I can only encourage everyone to go to these screening programs. But obviously, I'm probably a little bit biased, but nevertheless, I think I tell you the truth that we do need research today to actually develop the drugs for the future, so that we are going to make a bit better impact on these new therapies. And I just want to leave you with what Richard Nixon, the US president, said in 1971 when he declared the war on cancer. The field of clinical oncology is being transformed by basic science research, and that is despite the twists, turns, and the length of the road ahead. And I think what I would like you to take out from this lecture, take with you from this lecture, is that it's a long-term investment, but if we want to have a cure in 10 years' time, we need to work on it now. And this is what the Perkins actually does. And I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.